1/3 of all murder cases in America remain open.
He had told me that if I opened my eyes, he would slit my throat.
Each one is called a cold case.
The DNA evidence taken from the victim was a match. The Linden rapist was at it again.
Based on the hit A&E television program.
A phone call is placed, one that changes a family's life forever.
Cold Case Files, the podcast.
You could see the fire in his eyes. He screamed at me, "You want it? Get your tape recorder out."
Get new episodes of Cold Case Files every Tuesday on Podcast One, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and anywhere you listen to podcasts.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 252 of the True Crime All the Time Unsolved podcast. I'm Mike Ferguson, and with me, as always, is my partner in true crime, Mike Gibson. Gibby, how are you?
I'm doing good, man. How about you?
I'm doing great.
Good.
We've got a lot of new content out this weekend. We have a brand new True Crime All the Time episode out. We're talking about the murder of Mark Stover, who was known as the dog whisperer of the Pacific Northwest.
That's a good episode.
Yeah, it is. Make sure you check that out. We also put out a brand new Patreon episode on Saturday night on Jason Mon, a 19-year-old who murdered his father's girlfriend and her 14-year-old son because he was mad at his father.
Because of his love for his car.
Yeah, he was upset over his car. I mean, it's something. Gibbs, let's give our Patreon shout outs. We had Tammy Nettles.
Hey, Tammy.
Michael Brown.
Hey, Michael.
Tanya Henke.
Hey, thanks, Tanya.
Eileen Horn.
Well, hi, Eileen.
CJ Hayden.
Hey, CJ.
D. Monroe.
What's going on, D?
Lizzie.
Hey, thank you, Lizzie.
Derek Fleener.
What's up, Derek?
Pry Iwarima.
Hey, Pry.
Ms. Lenz, the Mystic of Michigan.
Well, we like that, Ms. Lenz.
Ashley Epps.
Hey, Ashley.
Rhonda Anderson.
Appreciate that, Rhonda.
Kristen Burke.
Hey, Kristen.
Melissa McIntyre.
What's going on, Melissa?
And Robbie Thomas.
Hey, thanks, Robbie.
So that's a lot of great new support. And then if we go back into the vault, Gibbs, this week we selected Becky Tate. So we appreciate the new support, the long-term Patreon support. I do have to make a correction from the vault. Last week, I said Aaron Wilhide. It was actually Brendan Wilhide. I put two names together that weren't supposed to go together.
Yeah, you did.
Messed up.
Yeah.
We had some PayPal donations from Judy Larson.
Hey, Judy.
Casey Nolder.
Thanks, Casey.
And David Rhodes.
All right, David.
So thanks to everyone. All right, buddy. Are you ready to get into this episode of True Crime All the Time Unsolved?
I'm ready.
Today, we're talking about the disappearance and murder of Revelle Balmain. In late 1994, Revelle disappeared from the suburb of Kingsford in Sydney, Australia. The talented dancer, model, and part-time escort was due to meet up with a friend for a drink after seeing a client. But Revelle never made it. When her belongings were found scattered about residential streets in Kingsford, a couple of days after she went missing, concerns for her welfare grew. Police conducted inquiries with Revelle's last client, who was the last known person to see her alive. But there was no sign of her. There was no suggestion as to where she'd gone or what had happened to her. As time passed, her heartbroken friends and family wondered if they would ever receive answers. Information began to emerge, though, about the lack of thoroughness and due diligence in the initial police investigation, which could have led to the loss of crucial evidence. Boy, and how many episodes do we do, Gibbs, where we talk about that? You know, you and I don't like to put down the police.
We don't.
You know, it's a hard job.
Yeah.
We respect the police, but it's necessary when you're doing these cases to point out when mistakes are made.
Of course.
You have to do it. It's crucial to the case. And I think we're going to see that a little bit in this one as well. A coroner's inquest in 1999 found Revelle had been murdered. In the years since, police have managed to determine with a pretty reasonable degree of certainty where she was killed. They just haven't figured out by whom, though they do have their suspicions. In late 2021, another interesting twist sparked renewed interest in the case when unrelated charges were laid against someone in Revelle's circle at the time she disappeared. Now, Revelle remains missing to this day, but police hold out hope that a hefty reward and a new inquest this year will motivate someone out there to come forward with information leading to a conviction. 22-year-old dancer and model Revelle Balmain was fun-loving, bubbly, and sophisticated. She was born in Sydney on July 11th, 1972, the middle of 3 children. Revelle grew up with her parents, Ivor and Jan, as well as her siblings. Revelle's lifelong love for dance began when she started classical ballet lessons at the age of 3, eventually taking on jazz ballet and tap dancing. Revelle was said to have had a zest for life. She was ambitious, outgoing, and she enjoyed socializing with her friends. As a young woman, she traveled to Japan for several short stints to work as a dancer. When she returned to Australia, she intended to pursue her dream of working as a professional dancer and full-time model. But as everyone knows, right, the entertainment industry is unpredictable.
Very.
That's why there's so many actors out in Hollywood waiting tables. They're waiting for their break.
Yeah, I went out there and tried to make it, and you know what I had to do.
Yeah. I mean, things that you don't like to talk about.
Right.
I mean, you had to because you're a terrible waiter.
Yeah, I don't do well at waiting on people.
But I mean, I think anything in the entertainment field, it can be kind of boom or bust, right? You get that break, you make it big, or you languish waiting for somebody to discover you, to get jobs. I think this is kind of what happened to her. And when that does happen, money becomes an issue, right? You got to have money to live.
Yeah.
In addition to taking all the dancing and modeling gigs she could, Revelle turned to work as an escort. She worked for 2 agencies. One was called Select Companions, where she was known as Misha. The other was called VIP Escorts, where she worked as Rachel. It was said that for Revelle, sex work was a means to an end, a temporary job to help her kind of, accumulate some funds until she could secure more regular dancing and modeling work. By 1994, Revelle lived with a roommate in Bellevue Hill in Sydney's exclusive eastern suburbs. According to News Corp, she was doing well as a model, having recently shot her first magazine cover.
That's a huge deal.
That's a very big deal for a model. If you're trying to make it in that game and you get a magazine cover, it's got to be a step in the right direction.
I remember when I got my first cover.
I do too.
Yeah.
I remember when you got that call from Hugh Hefner. You bragged about it for a week.
Well, I did, didn't I?
In October of 1994, she started dating 27-year-old Piers Fisher Pollard, whom she'd met through some mutual friends. Piers was taken by Revelle's vivacious personality, her poise, and her natural beauty. He later told the 9 Network he had no clue that Revelle was working part-time as an escort at any stage of their relationship.
She must have hidden it really well.
Yeah, for him to not have known at all. My assumption, Gibbs, is that that's probably not uncommon.
No, I think you're exactly right.
I don't know what the percentage would be, but I would say it might be high. That people in that line of work hide it from family, friends, maybe even a significant other. On November 4th, 1994, Piers stayed over at Revelle's apartment. The next day, he woke up with a migraine, and it was so bad that Revelle accompanied him to see a doctor in the nearby suburb of Bondi Junction. While they were out, she suggested that they have lunch together. But Piers wasn't feeling well, and he wanted to rest. So the couple said their goodbyes, with Piers watching as she boarded the bus around 1:10 p.m., headed into the city, which was about a 25-minute trip. That day, Revelle contacted Select Companions, letting them know that she was available for bookings. The owners of Select Companions were married couple Zoran and Jane Stanojevic. She agreed to a 2-hour booking at 4 p.m., followed by another booking at the Swiss Grand Hotel on Bondi Beach with 2 clients who were friends of Zoran's. Revelle's 4 p.m. booking was with a 27-year-old man named Gavin Samer. Gavin lived with his girlfriend on McNair Avenue in the southeast Sydney suburb of Kingsford and worked for his parents' business. According to the Daily Mail Australia, Gavin's girlfriend was away when he booked an escort on the weekend.
Yeah, so he wanted to play a little bit why his girlfriend was away.
Yeah, I don't know how many guys would book an escort while their girlfriend was home.
Good point, as always.
I'm not saying you should do it.
No.
Later that afternoon, the agency's driver dropped Revelle at Gavin's house. She was carrying her bag, pager, and a bottle of champagne that Gavin had requested. Revelle called the agency to say she'd arrived safely inside the house. She had a lot to look forward to. That upcoming week, she had 2 weeks of dance rehearsals before she was set to fly to Japan to work for 6 months as a dancer.
Sounds like a pretty good gig coming up.
Yeah. So this is kind of a big deal for her, right? We've already said the escort thing was temporary.
Right.
In her eyes, she never lost sight of her big goal.
Yeah, kept on working for it.
Which was to be a dancer, to be a model. Now she has this 6-month gig coming up in Japan as a dancer. At 5:50 p.m., Revelle contacted the escort agency to say that she was almost done with her booking and didn't require transport from Gavin's house. Around 7 p.m., Revelle received a text from her best friend Kate asking her to call. She called Kate 15 minutes later saying she was leaving the booking in Kingsford. The pair arranged to meet for a drink at the Royal Hotel in Paddington in the eastern suburbs. So at the very least, Gibbs, Kate knew
exactly
what she was doing because she, of what she told her on the phone. So maybe she didn't keep it a secret from everybody. It could be that she thought Piers wouldn't handle it well.
I think most boyfriends probably would not handle that well.
Yeah, you're probably right. Maybe if they knew that going into the relationship, that's one thing.
Exactly.
But to be in a relationship for some period of time and then to be told that, I think you're right. I think a lot of guys might struggle with that.
Sure.
Knowing that your girlfriend is out doing that while you're sitting at home.
It might hit their confidence level a little bit.
Might. According to the Sydney Morning Herald, Revelle told Kate she'd call her from home in an hour and mentioned that she planned to see Piers later that night. But Revelle never called Kate or showed up to the pub. Revelle also did not make it to her booking in Bondi. Piers tried to contact Revelle at 7:53 p.m., but didn't receive a response. He tried to contact her throughout the night, with his last attempt being at 2:30 a.m., but he never received a response from her. Revelle was due to catch the train north to the city of Newcastle the next day, November 6th, to have lunch with her mother, Jan. Jan waited at the station for her at 11 a.m. as they had arranged, but her daughter never showed up. And Jan knew right away that something was very wrong for Revelle not to show up or contact her family. And again, that's something that always comes up, right? Family, they know.
Oh, absolutely. If you're waiting for your daughter at a certain location, she doesn't show up, you would be extremely nervous.
I would, and, with no contact. Now, I think today's world, technology-wise, is so much different than 1994.
Yeah.
Today I have an app on my phone that tells me where every member of my family is at all times. I can see them driving. It tells me how fast they're going.
Yeah.
It's like we're living in two different worlds, really, if you think about it.
And it's kind of nice, that you can do that.
It is, but I also think back to the days where we had a little bit less technology.
Yeah.
And I think, man, that was nice too, because we had so much more personal interaction.
Sure. Yeah.
People had to talk to each other.
That's true.
You couldn't communicate through emojis. I still don't know how some of these kids have full conversations using only emojis.
Kind of drives you crazy.
My mother is now using emojis.
Well, that's crazy.
And that's just wrong. But obviously Jan knew something was wrong. She called Revelle's roommate. She called some of her friends. At Revelle's apartment, her roommate saw that she had started to pack her suitcase in preparation for her upcoming trip. But again, this was highly unusual stuff for Revelle. Not to have come home, not to have made contact since leaving the day before, not to show up to meet her mother, and not to call. Her roommate, her boyfriend, Piers, and her mother all notified the police that she was missing. That same day, across town in Kingsford, a woman's shoulder bag, makeup, a platform-type open-toed shoe studded with small shells, and a set of keys were found scattered around 4 streets, including Ainsley and Era Lewin streets. This is according to the 7 Network. The items were identified as belonging to Revelle. Revelle's other shoe and diary had also been found by a member of the public at 11:30 p.m. the night before. And what was interesting about these discoveries was that the items were found in the vicinity of the home of Revelle's last client, Gavin Samer. So on November 7th, more than 24 hours after she was reported missing, police interviewed Gavin. He later told investigators that following the booking, he'd driven Revelle to the nearby Red Tomato Inn near his home and dropped her off around 7:25 p.m. He also told police that Revelle stayed for another hour with him without the agency's knowledge. Gavin stated that after he dropped her off, he drove to the rear of the Red Tomato Inn. He parked the car and went into the establishment's liquor store. He then drove home, where he watched TV and fell asleep.
So the interesting part about this is she called the agency at 5:50 saying she didn't need a ride. And then she called her friend Kate around 7:15 to say she was going to meet up with her later. So if he dropped her off at 7:25, wouldn't she have said something to Kate on the phone at that time? Like, hey, I'm with this guy. I don't know. It just doesn't, timing wise, it seems off a little bit.
Well, and if you add in the statement that she stayed an extra hour, okay, why would she do that?
Yeah.
Because you're so awesome. You're the best lover she's ever had. Or is it a statement to make a timeline fit together?
I would go with that.
I think police probably thought that as well. So, I think the problem with Gavin's account of giving Revelle a lift after the booking was that no one around the inn that night saw either of them, including the pub's employees. And I think police thought this was odd because the pub was situated on Anzac Parade, a main road in that part of the city. The liquor store's record of transactions on the night in question also failed to show any evidence of Gavin purchasing cigarettes and liquor after he dropped Revelle off, as he told police. According to the 9 Network, one witness did come forward, telling police they saw a vehicle in Kingsford late on November 5th, similar to Gavin's blue Holden. They said they saw the vehicle on Araluen Street, and this was the same street where Revelle's keys and one shoe had been found the day after the booking. So you could see where police might find, some of this strange, some of it contradictory.
Sure.
I will say it never fails that we do a case in Australia and someone is driving a Holden.
There's that Holden again.
Is that the only car available in Australia?
I think it's the dominant car for sure.
Because it shows up in every episode we do. True Crime All the Time Unsolved is brought to you by Progressive. What's one thing you'd purchase with a little extra savings? A weighted blanket, a smart speaker, that new self-care trend you keep hearing about. Well, Progressive wants to make sure you're getting what you want by helping you save money on car insurance. Drivers who save by switching to Progressive save over $700 on average, and customers can qualify for an average of 6 discounts when they sign up. Discounts like having multiple vehicles on your policy. Progressive offers outstanding coverage and award-winning claim service. Day or night, they have customer support 24/7, 365 days a year. When you need them most, they're at their best. A little off your rate each month goes a long way. Get a quote today at Progressive.com and see why 4 out of 5 new auto customers recommend Progressive. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. National annual average insurance savings by new customers surveyed who saved with Progressive between June 2020 and May 2021. Potential savings will vary. Discounts vary and are not available in all states and situations. Bombas' mission is simple. Make the most comfortable clothes ever and match every item sold with an equal item donated. So when you buy Bombas, you're also giving to someone in need. Bombas design their socks, shirts, and underwear to be the clothes you can't wait to put on every day. Everything they make is extremely soft, seamless, tagless, and has a luxuriously cozy feel. They make their products from super soft materials like merino wool, Pima cotton, and even cashmere. And there's a pair of Bombas socks for everything you do. They come in tons of options. They have comfy performance styles for every sport and activity that keeps you moving. Their t-shirts are amazing. Bombas offers a wide array of great underwear. I know my family and I love their slippers as well. We're all wearing them during these cold months, so don't forget about those at all. And did you know that socks, underwear, and t-shirts are the 3 most requested clothing items at homeless shelters? That's why Bomba donates one for every item you buy. So go to bombas.com/TCATU and get 20% off your first purchase. That's BOMBAS.com/TCATU, TCATTU for 20% off. Bombas.com/TCATU. Now, during Gavin's interview, police noticed a small scratch on his neck. They asked him to remove his shirt, and they found similar scratches on his torso, which appeared to have been made by fingernails. There was also a small bite mark on the top of the middle finger of his left hand. Gavin initially told investigators he had no idea how he had sustained these injuries, which I found odd because, when I saw that in the research, I thought, okay, couldn't those be explained as having come through sex, through some type of sex act? I mean, he's already admitted, right? Police know that he was with Revelle.
Right.
In that way. Why wouldn't you try to explain the injuries that way? Fingernails, bite marks. Okay. Depending on what you're into.
Yeah.
That could happen.
Just laid out like that.
But he doesn't.
No.
I just found it odd. When police asked him how he paid for the booking, he told them he paid $400 cash for Revelle to pass on to the agency. He then paid for the extra hour with a personal check for $100 made out to Revelle. He claimed that he wanted to pay the agency in cash rather than use a credit card because his parents checked his bank statements.
Well, either you're an adult or you're not an adult. So, if you're going to do this type of activity, pay however you need to pay, but I mean, come on. And why write a check to her? If he's worried about that, wouldn't he be worried about writing the check and having the check state that it was paid to?
Well, but
woman?
that's a person's name as opposed to a credit card saying something like select companions.
Well, that's true.
You're gonna have a tougher time explaining that. I get it. $100 check to an unknown woman might be hard to explain to your girlfriend, to your parents. If they're checking your bank accounts, they're going to see that as well.
Exactly.
According to the Daily Telegraph, in order to get the cash, Gavin pawned his girlfriend's clarinet on the morning of November 5th for $250. Then the afternoon before Revelle came over, he won $150 on the poker machines at the Red Tomato Inn.
I'm just going to say to pawn anything of your girlfriend's for an escort service is probably not the right thing to do.
Well, I think your girlfriend would look at it that way. She would also say you shouldn't be using an escort service regardless.
Yeah.
But definitely don't pawn my damn clarinet.
Right. I need that.
That's like doing double damage. Not only are you cheating on her, you're selling her items in order to cheat.
It's almost like she's
paying for it. I don't think we have a lot on her, but she could not have been happy.
Oh.
After finding out all that went down. When police asked Gavin to provide the checkbook to verify his claim about writing this check to Revelle, he told them it had since gone missing. And they couldn't find anyone at the Red Tomato Inn who recalled seeing Gavin there playing the poker machines on the day in question. So it's not really looking good for old Gavin. First of all, he's a cheater. He's a thief. And none of his story is checking out, Gibbs.
Right. It's not adding up.
But it is convenient that you need to get your hands on $400 exactly to pay for an escort. You get $250 for the clarinet, and you just happen to win $150 playing the poker machines.
That day.
Not even $160, and I had $10 left over. Right on the button. And then police spoke to Gavin's girlfriend.
Oh, this ought to be good.
She confirmed that she noticed his injuries when she returned from her weekend away. She also told police that Gavin had been doing some housework, like washing the sheets off the bed. And she said she remembered this because it was very unlike Gavin to wash the sheets.
Suspicious.
Very suspicious. But here's my thought. If you know when your girlfriend is coming home, could you not wash the sheets before she got home?
Yeah, I think if you're somebody that's going to cheat on your partner, you probably want to change those sheets way before they get home.
Sure.
Not at the moment they walk in the door. It's going to seem strange.
Yeah, that part didn't seem to make sense to me. But again, there's not a lot in this case so far that is making sense where Gavin is concerned. She also said that she recalled him cleaning out his blue Holden to what she said was a meticulous level.
Well, I'm sure that got the authorities' attention.
Sure. I'm sure the minute they heard that a man was washing the sheets, everybody's ears in the station perked up. This guy's done something wrong.
Exactly.
In the days following Revelle's disappearance, detectives visited Gavin's house on 3 different occasions, but it was only on the 3rd visit, conducted 5 days after Revelle went missing, where they actually had a warrant allowing them to search the home. And even then, investigators only conducted a cursory search. They didn't have any forensic technicians who went to the home. According to the Daily Mail Australia, police used ground penetrating radar to search Gavin's backyard, but they didn't find anything. They also didn't find any evidence suggesting that Gavin had any involvement in Revelle's disappearance. So, again, it's one thing for somebody's story to have a lot of holes in it, to not make, all that much sense.
Right.
It's another thing to put together the evidence needed to charge someone.
Yeah.
Those are 2 very different things. Then on November 10th, police spoke to Revelle's boyfriend Piers. Gibbs, he was shocked and confused to find out that his girlfriend had been a sex worker.
I think any guy would.
Yeah, I mean, number one, she's missing.
Right.
So there's got to be shock and confusion there. But then police are letting him in on the fact that, she was an escort.
Right.
And he had no idea. He told police he paged Revelle at 5 p.m. on November 5th, and then he called around to a friend's house. Revelle called the friend and asked her to pass a message on to Piers that she was sleeping. And we know why. Gibbs, right? We know that Revelle was still at her booking with Gavin.
Right.
And Piers' attempts to get a hold of her went unanswered for the rest of the night. When police spoke to the owners of Select Companions, Zoran and Jane, it turned out Revelle didn't exactly have a great relationship with her bosses. At the time she disappeared, she owed the agency around $400 from previous jobs, and they said she had a reputation for failing to attend bookings. Zoran and Jane provided conflicting accounts of Zoran's movements on the night Revelle disappeared. Jane said the couple purchased a TV from an electronics store, then went to have dinner in the inner city suburb of Darlinghurst. After they returned home, she said that Zoran went to the agency's office around 6:30 p.m. Zoran told police he went to the office, he installed the TV, and then he returned home around 7 p.m. He claimed he didn't see Revelle that night. And he said that later on he was transporting another escort to and from bookings. But police failed to verify his alibi with the escort in question. So, I think when we look at all of this stuff, it was said that Revelle wasn't exactly on good terms with her bosses. Obviously, there were some questions over Zoran's whereabouts, his alibi. But at that point, police had no reason to suspect that the couple was involved in her disappearance.
If she's unreliable and she owed them $400, is that a reason to do anything?
Well, yeah, I'm not really seeing the motive. I'm sure police had trouble seeing what the motive would be for them to be involved. Both of them for sure. And really even Zoran. At the end of the day, she was making them money.
Yeah, exactly.
Now, if she was so unreliable that she was costing them money, they would have fired her.
Agreed.
So not a lot of motive there, really. It wasn't until November 11th, 5 days after Revelle was initially reported missing, that police made a public appeal for information about her whereabouts. Detectives publicly pursued the theory that Revelle had been abducted. I think in large part, this was based on the way her belongings were scattered along some of the streets in Kingsford, almost as if she'd been involved in a struggle, or maybe someone had thrown them out the window of a car or something like that.
That's one of my first thoughts when you learned that they found her items scattered on 4 different streets. It made good sense that might have been what happened. Like someone just tossed them out the window as they drove along.
At different intervals.
Yeah.
Yeah. Gavin Samer's car wasn't seized for a forensic search until 9 days after Revelle disappeared. There was no evidence that she had been in the vehicle, but we talked about it, right? It had been thoroughly cleaned by that point.
Yeah, according to his girlfriend, he was really doing a good job on that holding.
And it was said police still hadn't sealed off Revelle's bedroom or the apartment where she lived. So, we talked about this up front, right? There are a lot of people, when they look at this case, they point to the police and the police work and say, okay, there are some deficiencies.
Right.
Well, now we're starting to maybe see what some of those are. According to the Sydney Morning Herald, police told Piers and Revelle's friends not to speak publicly about the disappearance on the basis that it could be unsafe for them to do so. And what's the theory there, Gibbs? What do you think? that if someone was after her, they would then maybe come after these people for talking about it. That's the only thing I can think of.
Try to keep them quiet.
But as often happens, police held back information from the public. What the public didn't know at the time was that Revelle had been moonlighting as a sex worker. They also didn't know the details of where she had last been seen. So I get it. It's something that crops up a lot. Police want to hold some things back.
It makes sense.
But there's kind of a fine line there. You want the public's help, right? You want someone to come forward with information, but you're not giving them a lot to work with. Around 2 weeks after Revelle went missing, the police still had no meaningful leads, but a $100,000 reward was announced by the New South Wales government for anyone providing information leading to the arrest of a suspect involved in Revelle's disappearance. New South Wales police established Strike Force Aramac to investigate Revelle's disappearance. I think, they became desperate for new information. So in late December 1994, the Strike Force arranged for a filmed reenactment of Revelle's last known movements on Anzac Parade. But still, no one came forward. Her family was desperate for answers. They distributed flyers throughout Southeast Sydney appealing for information. At the same time, the Balmains were frustrated, and they felt that the police were leaving them out of the loop. According to the Herald Sun, investigators, for some reason, hadn't interviewed all of Revelle's clients or associates, let alone her closest friends, whom the family felt could have assisted with the investigation.
So it kind of goes back to the lack of police efforts.
Right, not doing the required due diligence. And I think you'd have to say, with, all of the things that have come out, that it's true. There were things that were not done that should have been done. There were things that were done that should have been done much earlier in the investigation. When the Balmains tried to speak with detectives, they felt that their concerns were dismissed and ignored. Revelle's family and boyfriend felt that the police just weren't invested in finding her because she was a sex worker. And man, how many times does that come up? And every time it does, Gibbs, it ticks me off.
Sure.
This is a woman who's loved. She has friends, family, a boyfriend. Why would police treat her disappearance, her investigation, any differently than anyone else, solely based on her occupation? I don't understand it. I'll never understand it. Now, I get it. There are sex workers in some of the cases that we profile who are very hard to pin down. They lead a very transient lifestyle.
True.
That makes the investigation tougher, but it doesn't mean that any less effort should be put into it. I mean, you're just really doing a disservice to that person, obviously.
Right. Yeah, for sure.
Now, I'm not saying that was the reason. I think what we're saying is her family thought that was the reason. And let's face it, it's proved to be the reason in many, many cases that we've done.
Yeah, for sure. We absolutely covered many of those. But our family's frustrated about how the investigation's gone at this point.
Police interviewed Gavin for a second time on January 30th, 1995. This time, he explained his minor injuries by saying he could have gotten those while out surfing on the morning of the day Revelle disappeared. Officers asked Gavin for his wetsuits, but it's unclear whether any damage to the suit was consistent with his scratches. But it was noted that police didn't ask for Gavin's other clothing, what he was wearing the day Revelle disappeared. Now, we're pretty far on.
We are.
So, by this point in time, any forensic evidence that would have been on his clothing in the hours and days after Revelle disappeared would have been long gone.
But again, maybe the investigators should have collected some of that clothing when they interviewed him the first time.
Early on.
Yeah.
At Gavin's third interview, his story about the source of his injuries changed again. This time he told police it was possible that he could have gotten them while gardening.
That gardening's rough, man.
Yeah, you got to be careful while you're gardening.
Yeah.
This guy's very active, though.
He is.
I mean, he's gardening, he's surfing, he's pawning. He's doing a lot of stuff in this one day or in the days leading up to it.
Right.
You know, I'm laughing. I shouldn't be, but it is almost comical when you kind of go through this guy's story line by line. Anytime someone changes their story up 2 or 3 different times, it's a major red flag.
Right.
You know, here are the facts. Something happened, and this is what it is. Normally, that never changes.
No, if it's the truth, it's going to remain the same.
Right. Whatever you and I had for dinner tonight,
Yeah.
that's what we had.
Right.
Next week, I'm not going to tell the police that, no, we had something else.
Right.
Now, I get it. You could forget. Somebody asks you way down the line. You don't know. But it's almost as if he's throwing things against the wall to see, okay, does this sound believable? What about this?
Right.
Maybe this will be more believable. I will say this guy's good around the house, man. He's a gardener. He washes sheets. He cleans out cars. He's tidy.
He is very tidy.
This episode is brought to you by Surfshark. The internet is getting more dangerous by the second. Hackers have more ways to target you. Trackers are following your every move, and malware is hiding all over the web. Luckily, there's a solution. You can get a VPN. It will hide your real location, making you more difficult to identify and target. But privacy and security are not all that Surfshark has to offer. If you use a VPN, you will forget about geo restrictions. You'll be able to access everything from news sources to social media apps that are unavailable to you because of your location. Just change your virtual location and access all the entertainment you want safely and securely. And you can try out Surfshark completely risk-free because they have a 30-day money-back guarantee. Get Surfshark VPN at surfshark.deals/TCAT. Use the promo code TCAT, TCATT, for 83% off and 3 extra months free. That's surfshark.deals/TCAT. 4 years passed, and in September 1998, a coroner's inquest was held to determine formally what happened to Revelle. Some of the evidence heard bordered on what you would have to call the far-fetched. The court heard outlandish allegations that she'd been abducted by a Saudi Arabian millionaire. According to the Australian ABC, a group of men also made a submission alleging that Revelle had been killed because she was stealing clients from the escort agency. But the court later determined the men's claims were unreliable, given the fact that there was no evidence to support the allegation.
I don't know if she was stealing clients from the agency. I don't know if that has any bearing to it because she was getting ready to go on a 6-month tour in Japan. Are those clients just going to wait around till you get back? Doesn't make any sense.
Another theory that the court heard but eliminated was that Revelle had staged her own disappearance. But again, there was no evidence to support this, and I think the court just thought, okay, that's extremely unlikely. And why wouldn't they think that, Gibbs, right? She had a lot going for her coming up. You mentioned it. This new gig in Japan. It sounds like she was excited about it. Why disappear now? For what reason?
Yeah, it doesn't make any sense.
Right? Nobody came forward and said, okay, she was fearful. There was somebody after her. You would need something like that to have any support. So up until this point, right? And we're 4 years after Revelle's disappearance, Gavin Samer's identity had been subject to a media suppression order. But at the inquiry, he was publicly named as the main police suspect. Gavin declined to answer any questions at the inquest, based on legal advice. Now, I think that raised some eyebrows. Naturally, but it really doesn't with us, right? That's something that we've talked about ad nauseum. If your attorney tells you don't answer questions, okay, they probably know best.
Yeah, listen to your attorney.
But it doesn't stop people from thinking that you have something to hide. That's always going to happen. The inquiry also focused on the integrity of the police investigation, and the court was critical of the police's failure to conduct a thorough forensic search of Gavin's home and car in the hours after Revelle was reported missing. Police tried to explain the delay by saying they didn't think Revelle was dead at that stage. In May 1999, the coroner's court delivered an open finding, determining that Revelle had been killed by a person or persons unknown. Under state law, this at least gave the Balmain family somewhat of an official answer as to the manner of her death, even if the perpetrator or cause of death couldn't be identified. But my thought, Gibbs, is that they probably had to have thought that already.
I would think so.
You know, we're 4 or 5 years on. Something bad happened to her.
Right. It's the only logical thing to think, right? Why would she wouldn't just disappeared because she had a good thing coming up with her career. So something had to happen to her.
And that something is probably not going to be good. The coroner was suspicious of Gavin Samer's level of involvement. But according to the Australian ABC, the court acknowledged there simply wasn't sufficient evidence to bring any charges against him, saying while Gavin had the opportunity to kill Revelle, there was nothing to support a potential motive on his part, nor on the part of Revelle's employers, whose potential involvement was also explored. But the court did note Zoran's inconsistent account of his movements that night and the police's failure to verify his alibi at the time. But really nothing more came out of this inquest, and Revelle's case went cold. Then, almost 10 years later, there was a promising development after the case was reopened as part of a broader policy review. In 2008, forensics officers examined Gavin's former home in Kingsford at the request of cold case detectives. 13 years had passed since Revelle disappeared, but advances in forensic technology over the years gave new hope that something meaningful could now be found. We don't know exactly what the search yielded, but it must have been some pretty compelling stuff because it led investigators to believe that Revelle had been murdered at that property.
That's some big news.
It is. The 9 Network reported that Gavin had moved to Tasmania by this time, but when investigators flew down to speak with him, he refused to provide a voluntary DNA sample. Gavin's refusal to cooperate didn't stop the New South Wales government from announcing that the reward for information leading to the conviction of Revelle's killer or killers would be increased to $250,000.
Good money, man.
Yeah, I mean, you and I have said it a number of times. They do not mess around in Australia when it comes to rewards for information. They really put the number up high, and it makes sense. You are much more likely to get a good tip at that type of number.
I'd go swab that guy's mouth for that money.
Hey, like I said, what you do in your free time, that's up to you. Don't tell me about it. I don't need to know all the details. Yeah. But to me, Gibbs, why in the world would Gavin Samer provide voluntarily a DNA sample? Police have already come out and said that they believe Revelle was murdered at that property where he was living at the time. Nothing good can happen.
No.
Or can come from him providing a DNA sample.
Not at all, man.
2 years later, in 2010, Revelle's father sadly died without ever knowing what happened to his daughter. In 2018, Gavin Samer was back in court on a theft charge, And with his link to Revelle back in the media spotlight, he told the Daily Mail Australia, "I'm one of the softest, nicest blokes on the planet. I'm mellow. I'm totally anti-violence. I'm not worried about getting arrested over the Revelle thing. I've done nothing wrong. I hired a hooker. That's the only thing I did. Big deal." Wow. That statement kind of blows me away.
Yeah.
I get the first part. All right. You're saying you're a nice guy. You're against violence. Referring to this unsolved murder case as the Revelle thing.
Right.
I mean, how insensitive is that? I just don't get it. I don't think people understand, when they're talking, how they're really going to come off. I would have chosen my words much more carefully. In late 2019, Gavin was convicted of stalking and assaulting his female roommate, but this was later overturned based on insufficient evidence. He was also charged with indecent assault, but this charge was dropped. The former roommate died in the hospital only 4 months later from injuries sustained during a fire at her home. You think some people think that might be a little suspicious?
I think I find it suspicious because, he had this other issues with this other woman, and some of the incidents he was convicted and charged, or charged and convicted, but then it was overturned. But, he's always making this claim he's this nice guy, but it doesn't really seem like he's this nice guy.
Well, I'll say this. He's either very unlucky to be put in all of these bad situations,
right,
or have these things levied against him, or he's the luckiest guy in the world, meaning that, he really is doing some of these things, but getting away with it. To me, it's one or the other.
It's true.
Sadly, Revelle's mother, Jan, passed away in 2020. She too never got the answers she was looking for about what happened to her daughter. Revelle's older half-sister, Sue Ellen, now maintains the fight to find out what happened, as she has from the very beginning. The investigation into Revelle's disappearance and death remains open. Now, we've heard about some of the main theories. I think there are a few more to talk about. The coroner considered that Revelle had run away or possibly staged her own disappearance. But I think most people look at that and say, all right, she didn't really take anything with her. Valuables were left. We know that some of her other belongings were found thrown out on the street like they'd been disposed of. This is something that comes up a lot in unsolved cases. To me, it just doesn't seem all that plausible that someone would go to the trouble of staging their disappearance but not take anything with them. Why would you leave behind your diary? Did she go barefoot? Because we know her shoes were found, on the street. I think most people believe that Revelle Balmain was murdered, but there's a question, right? Why has her body not been found? Well, most likely it's because her murderer disposed of it.
Sure.
In a way that nobody would find it. I think that, to me, kind of rules out a few things. An accidental death.
Right.
Suicide. In those situations, you would expect to find a body. And according to those who knew her well, she was in a good place in her life. She was planning for the future. We talked about her looking forward to her trip to Japan, and she was close to her family. She had a good relationship with her boyfriend. None of that adds up to wanting to take your life. We know people do.
Right.
It happens. It just doesn't seem like she was in that place or anybody thought that she could be anywhere near that place in her life.
So then you got to wonder who would want to harm her.
Yeah. Then you're looking at, okay, did she have any enemies? We know that she had some issues with her bosses at Select Companions. She owed them what? Something like $400. Would someone really have killed her over $400? Doubtful.
Yeah, extremely doubtful.
Police didn't believe that her employers were involved. There was some questions over Zoran's alibi. Jane and Zoran have since split, and she apparently has cooperated with the investigation fully. She later told the Sydney Morning Herald she had no idea where Zoran was between 6:30 and 10 p.m. on the night in question. Okay, that doesn't make you look great.
No.
But he said, he was ferrying an escort here and there. Police weren't able to corroborate that. When it comes to Revelle's boyfriend, Piers, police eliminated him as a suspect early on in the investigation. We mentioned it, right? They were happy. He didn't even know Revelle was a sex worker until police told him. Pierce also had a solid alibi. For the night his girlfriend disappeared, he was out at some bars around the city with a friend most of the night. And then I think we have to finish up with Gavin Samer. Gavin has consistently denied having anything to do with Revelle's disappearance and murder. We mentioned it, Gibbs. We don't really know anything about what type of evidence police found at his former home. But whatever it was, it led them to believe that she was murdered there. To me, that's significant. They found something. At the very least, this is a guy who doesn't look good in this case.
Right.
You'd have to say that. Revelle's belongings were found in the streets near his home. He refused to provide a DNA sample. And then go back to his girlfriend's statements, right? He washed the bed sheets. He cleaned his car, both of which she said were unusual things for him to do.
Which makes it very suspicious.
Yeah. In May 2021, at the urging of Revelle's half-sister, Sue Ellen, the reward for information leading to the arrest of her killer or killers was increased to $1 million.
Wow.
That is a staggering figure. In response to that, detectives anonymously received a photograph of a man whose identity has not been released to the public and is said to have been unknown to Revelle. This led to police searching 3 addresses in the eastern suburbs for DNA evidence in November of 2021. According to 9 News, these were Revelle's former Bellevue Hill apartment, the former Swiss Grand Hotel on Bondi Beach, and a former brothel in Potts Point. We have no idea about the outcome of the property searches, but it definitely sounds as though police may be moving closer to identifying her killer.
Well, it certainly sounds like that they're continuing to work the case.
And my thought is, for $1 million, they are going to continue to receive tips, leads. They may all be bogus, but they're going to get a bunch.
They will.
In December 2021, Revelle's former boss, Zoran, and 4 other men were arrested as part of an alleged Serbian crime syndicate. According to the 7 Network, the 63-year-old is alleged to be involved in growing and supplying cannabis, as well as selling luxury stolen goods. Now, while these charges aren't linked directly to Revelle's disappearance, police have since named Zoran as a person of interest in her case. And there is a new coroner's inquest set to occur later in 2022.
It'll be interesting to see what comes about.
Yeah, no doubt about that. I mean, there are 2 people on police radar, right? Gavin Samer and Zoran.
Right.
Gavin's got a whole lot of things going on that just don't seem to kind of add up. Zoran has a block of time that can't be accounted for on the night that Revelle disappeared. It's a pretty large block of time. Sure. A lot of things could have occurred during that amount of time. But then when you find out that, okay, he's got involvement in this alleged crime syndicate, well, I think that opens up a lot of other possibilities.
Yeah.
But we'll wait and see.
I still think I know where my money's at.
Yeah, and I do as well. And I think a lot of people who look at this case, who study this case, look at, this guy, Gavin Samer, and think, man, things just don't seem to add up. But at the same time, up to this point, apparently there's been nothing concrete to, hold against him. Now, you have to think, would there have been if police had done some things very early on in the investigation before he had a chance to do, a lot of these things that we talked about. I don't know. The problem is when you don't do those things, you'll never know.
Exactly.
Because once that opportunity passes, it's gone.
It's missed.
If you have any information on the disappearance and murder of Revelle Balmain, you can contact Australian Crime Stoppers at 1-800-333-000 or visit www.nsw.crimestoppers.com.au to submit an anonymous tip. That's it, Gibbs, for our episode on the unsolved murder of Revelle Balmain. We got some voicemails. You want to check those out?
Let's hear them.
Hi, Mike and Gibby. My name is Amanda, and I'm from Illinois. And I just wanted to say how much I love your podcast because I listen to it like 24/7. I listen to it while doing my homework, while drawing, doing chores, like basically anything. I've been listening for about a year and a half, I think, and I'm addicted. I've literally gotten all my friends to listen to it. I always recommend your podcast. And yeah, it's just really enjoyable for me to listen to, and you guys are so entertaining and funny. So I hope you have a great day and keep your own time ticking.
Awesome. Thanks for the voicemail and thanks for the word of mouth. We don't talk about it all that often, but telling your friends about the podcast, that makes a huge difference.
It does. We appreciate that.
I was listening to one of the older unsolved episodes, and someone left a voicemail about something being solved by genealogy. So I'm wondering if I'm the only one that is hesitant to do the genealogy website. I mean, not the website, but you know what I'm talking about. Because if I had a serial killer like generations ago, I'm not sure, in my family, I'm not sure whether or not I would want to know. Because on the one hand, it would give the family peace of mind, but on the other hand, it would bother me that someone in my family, my great-great-grandpa or something like that, was a killer. So I wonder if I'm the only one. And if anybody was a murderer, it would be on my dad's side. It certainly wouldn't be on my mama's side of the family. But, I'm just curious if anybody else feels that way. Bye.
No, I actually think a lot of people feel that way. Now, my understanding, Gibbs, and I could be wrong, is that, the ones like 23andMe or Ancestry, there's a bunch of different ones.
Right.
I don't believe that they're just letting law enforcement willy-nilly have access to that stuff.
Right.
My understanding is you have to voluntarily submit your own to something like GEDmatch, and then police are able to get it there.
Okay.
I could be wrong about that, and that could change.
It could.
So even if I am correct, those policies could change in the future. So, no, I think people are leery about things like that. Not everybody wants to know.
No.
If they have, a serial killer or even a single murder type killer in their family tree.
I forbade people in my family to do it.
Did you say forbade?
And forbid.
Or forbade?
And that too.
Okay. All right. That's good to know.
Hey guys, this is Leah Page calling from Granite Falls, Washington, and I just want to thank you guys so much for all your hard work. I just recently became a Patreon, and so I just paid for the full year. I know I emailed you guys a while ago and let you know that too because my address was all messed up or something, but I just want to thank you guys again because my husband has just started working nights, and I really struggle sleeping when he's not home. It's hard to not have that person there with you when you're so used to him being there. And so I just wanted to thank you guys because at night when I'm trying to sleep, I just put in a podcast and I just listen to you guys talk and just, it just kind of helps me just relax and, just get ready for the day and, for the next day. And I just thanks, guys. I really appreciate that. And, you put my mind at ease, even though you're talking about murderers and serial killers. It's just weird that, that's what helps me get to sleep at night when my husband's working nights. So thanks, guys. I really appreciate you. I love you both, so I can't really pick a side because you both do great. And have a great, blessed, beautiful day. And keep your own time ticking. Thanks, guys. Bye.
Well, thank you very much, Leah. Appreciate the support on Patreon.
We do.
And Gibby and I are here for you.
Yeah.
Always.
Hey, Mike and Gibby. My name is Sarah. I'm from Louisiana. And I just wanted to hop on here and give you guys a shout out because y'all are literally what gets me through my day. When I say that I am doing nothing all day at work here recently since Hurricane Ida, I mean it. So I have had plenty of time to catch up on y'all episodes. And, man, y'all make me laugh. Y'all have kept me in line, I swear. I keep my head on a swivel, and I always tell my kids that when we're out in public. I'm always looking. I always think of you guys whenever I start looking around at suspicious things. So I just want to say thanks for making the podcast, and I tell everybody about y'all, and I hope one day that I can meet y'all at Crime Con. Keep it on time ticking, and I want to say I'm Team Fergie.
Man, I like her energy.
I love her accent, too.
Yeah.
So we had Crime Con in Nolans.
You did?
What, 3 years ago?
I think so.
Give or take?
Yeah.
Something like that.
Yeah.
Maybe they'll have it down there again because we had a blast. I love New Orleans.
I did too.
It's just such a fun city. All right, Gibbs, that is it for another episode of True Crime All the Time Unsolved. So for Mike
and Gibby,
stay safe and keep your own time ticking.
This February on Pluto TV, we're putting the spotlight on iconic Black talent. Watch your favorite movies like Top 5, 48 Hours, and More Than a Game. And drop in to binge Black TV classics like The Bernie Mac Show and Moesha. Pluto TV has hundreds of channels and thousands more movies and TV shows, all for free. So download the Pluto TV app on your favorite streaming device and start watching today. Pluto TV, drop in, watch free.